for advocates.
You happy?
Yes, I am.
The 1st of July felt like an early Independence Day.
What do you think?
It's awesome, man. Awesome. About time.
At the Roslyn Metro and 3 other places across Virginia,
I think it's pretty cool.
the Great Commonwealth Cannabis Seed Share gave away hundreds of tubes, each containing 6 marijuana seeds.
4 plants per person. Starts today. Thank you.
You can give away seeds in Virginia,
Sounds good. Excited.
but do not try to sell them.
Let me give you your seeds and your soul. There you go. Plant your new babies. Enjoy them.
As of now, you can legally grow up to 4 plants, possess up to an ounce, and consume in private. But you cannot legally buy it without a prescription.
Politicians have dollar signs in their eyes when they really should have the scales of justice in their eyes.
Many legalization advocates say Virginia still needs to do much more.
Lawmakers say it will be at least 2024 before the Virginia Cannabis Control Authority sets up a retail market for recreational users. And while people who've been busted for pot in the past can get their records expunged, there is no provision to resentence the disproportionately black and brown people who are doing time now.
Pardoning them, commuting sentences, this has to be the next step.
2, 1.
Still, for pot fans celebrating a Keybridge Tea Party at midnight,
What it means is freedom.
this felt like a good first step. In Roslyn, Bruce LaShan, WUSA 9.